Welcome to the Fintech Times News and Views podcast. Established in 2016, the Fintech Times is a global multimedia news outlet centered around the world's first leading fintech newspaper. We report on the latest and brightest ideas from the fintech world. Follow the conversation using hashtag TFD News and Views and follow us at the Fintech Times. Hello, and welcome back to the Fintech Times News and Views podcast brought to you by Vanta. Vanta helps you save time, money, and build customer trust, all by centralizing program requirements and evidence collections for frameworks like Dora. If you want to manage risk and prove security, then head to vanta.com/fintechtimes to learn more. So we are back together again, together at last, all to talk about fintech. And guys, it is the end of January at the time of recording. January is over. Actually, by the time people listen to this, January will be over. We made it. We did it. How are you guys doing? How's life? How's everything with you?
I mean, I can't believe it's the end of January already, just because it felt like yesterday that we sat down to record the first podcast of the year, talking about predictions and how slow it was. And since then, everything's sped up. This week, we've had like a big week for like big headlines. Everyone's been talking about DeepSeek. They've been talking about Trump unveiling his new fintech brand, investing in crypto. And we've just had loads to cover. And it feels like a really good time to be in fintech, or at least for those of us that are covering the news. Maybe not the actual fintechs, but no, it's been a good time, and it feels like a very optimistic time for fintech.
Yeah, absolutely. I share your optimism. I think it's shaping up to be a really exciting year. But Francis, how are you doing? How's your week gone?
Yeah, it's been nice. I had a couple of days off throughout the week, which was nice to sort of get a break. And it's really weird. It feels like at the same time, while it does feel like yesterday it was the start of the year, it also feels like we've had 3 months in one at the same time. And like it does feel like it's taken quite a while to get to the end of the month. But nonetheless, I think we can officially say we're back in the flow of things now. We've got a lot of news coming across our desks, a lot of interesting stories. And yeah, like you guys said, the state of the world right now is shaping up to be an interesting year for fintech.
Absolutely. So, I mean, without further ado, let's talk about some of that exciting fintech stuff and news that has been happening this week. So, Tom, what are you going to be talking about this week?
So this week, I'm going to be talking about a new nationwide campaign in the UK that's looking to reduce smartphone and data theft.
And Francis, what are you going to be talking about?
So the article I want to talk about today is surrounding Fintech Australia's latest findings on the impact fintech has had on SMEs in the country.
Lovely. And I'm going to be talking about making digital payments more accessible with Molly bringing tap to pay to iPhone in the UK. Tom, I'm going to let you go first. Why don't you take it away?
Absolutely. So, as I'm sure you're both aware, and all our listeners are as well, the UK, particularly in and around London, has a pretty serious problem with smartphone theft, and it feels like it's gotten a lot worse over the last few years. And I mean, to be honest, every time I walk around London, I'm literally in awe at how many people like leave themselves open to it, like whether it's holding their phones at the edge of the pavement, or there's you see phones hanging out of people's pockets or bags. And like I always think, like, walk around thinking it would be so easy for anyone to just snatch that and run off. Obviously, quite famously, you've got a lot of people right now on bikes riding around snatching phones like from people off the pavement, and a large number of people just don't make it difficult at all. And that's the reason why this new campaign caught my eye, and it's by the fintech and mobile security platform Nuke from Orbit. And basically it says that smartphone theft in the UK has more than doubled to 78,000 incidents in the past year alone. And to try and tackle this, it's teaming up with an ethical hacker, Nikhil Rain, to arm consumers with practical knowledge to protect their devices as well as their personal data. So obviously, as mobile payments are becoming the nation's preferred transaction method, there are new sophisticated like theft methods that are quickly emerging, where the device isn't actually the sole target of the criminals, but actually the data within the device. So obviously we're talking about them stealing the phone and then accessing it to gain access to, say, your mobile banking or your mobile management apps or digital wallets. And it comes at a crucial time because obviously UK neobanks recently surpassed traditional banks in app downloads, and just digital banking full stop is, bigger than it's ever been. But the report by Nuke from Orbit says that 62% of phone theft victims suffer additional losses beyond their device. So 1 in 5 victims face unauthorized access to their mobile banking apps, while 1 in 4 experience digital wallet theft. And I think that's something that's really easy to forget, because often you see these you see it on the news a lot recently, or you see it in person, people snatching a phone off someone on the street, and you think, oh, they're stealing the device to wipe it and sell it, because each phone, say, is worth hundreds of pounds each. But obviously that's not the case, and 1 in 4, 1 in 5 people seeing their data actually stolen, these thefts gaining access to their mobile banking. And obviously it's just something that I think not a lot of people firstly know about and think it's even possible. And to try and crack down on it, the new campaign basically offers a range of resources, including online guides, as well as a video tutorial series featuring Nicole Rain that basically demonstrates step-by-step measures to prevent theft. Now, some of their tips are quite simple but effective. So it includes enabling multi-factor authentication, using strong, unique passwords, and avoiding easy-to-guess pins, activating remote tracking and wiping, regularly installing security software updates on your phone to guard against new threats, and avoiding public Wi-Fi. But I mean, when I read this and looked into it, I was really surprised that so many thieves, such a large number, are able to gain access to people's mobile banking. And for that reason, I wanted to ask both of you guys whether you think this shows that, is it a case of the banks themselves aren't doing enough to keep your data and accounts secure, or is it just a case of, again, people aren't careful enough, and a lot of people don't have enough of a drive to take care of their data security, and a lot of them are just having this won't happen to me attitude? Is it, which sort of side of the spectrum do you think it is, or do you think it's a mix of both? Francis, I'll come to you first.
I definitely think it's a mix of both. I don't think you can really put too much more blame on one side than the other. I think there is definitely an aspect of people think, especially in London, that it's such a big city that these sort of things won't happen to me. Like, I'm not going to lose my phone. And they sort of, but yeah, like you say, put themselves in vulnerable situations, which are just sort of like almost facepalm worthy, to be honest. You just think, why are you doing this? Like, just take a little bit of care. And I think that attitude does roll over into data protection as well, because again, people think it just won't happen to me. They just think that is just a stat people say, almost like a fear tactic to try and urge people to perhaps use new security measures that sometimes cost money, and they think, oh, it's just a big old marketing ploy. But it's not. There is definitely some truth to it. And yeah, I think it's difficult to sort of say, like, what can really be done from the sense that then there should be some sort of lockdown procedure where if a phone is it will make it easier to report a phone stolen or something like that. But then I think it just becomes almost a logistical and technical issue of, well, how do you make that more accessible to someone who's had their phone stolen? And I think there is definitely a responsibility from the banking or the banks and the fintechs to protect data. I think in terms of protecting someone's phone, there's nothing they can do. But in terms of protecting data, they do have a responsibility to ensure that even with consumer ignorance and sort of naivety, thinking that, this will never happen to me, that they're prepared for the potential, theft that could take place. And I think the fact that, it does seem so almost easy for criminals to get a hold of this data is worrying and should act as a wake-up call for organizations. So yeah, I think there really isn't, like I say, I don't think you can put too much blame on one side than the other, because each has a sort of a different responsibility to it. But from a data standpoint, I definitely do think that regardless of if you want to blame the consumers or not, banks must do more to protect data, because it is so crucial. And to, like you said, to think that it's just being wiped and the device is being sold is also just naive to think that.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think the one thing that stood out to me, that I didn't say before, was that only 0.8% of theft from the person cases lead to a conviction. And 81.9% of investigations regarding these kind of phone thefts are closed without ever identifying the suspect. And I think it just goes to show that there's actually no way to kind of recover. Once you've lost it, the odds of you recovering that device, and there being a conviction or whatever the case may be, are so slim. And I think that's one of the reasons why the campaign focuses so much on prevention. And I think a lot of that is, while I do agree, I feel like there is probably more emphasis at this time on users being a bit more proactive, because like I said, there are quite a lot of methods they can use to make their accounts more secure. Multi-factor authentication, just making sure that they haven't got a really easy to guess pin, no 2468s or anything like that. They need to pick, just things that are harder to guess. It's keeping your software updated. I think these are things that are within people's control, and if they did do those and everyone did it consistently, then those 1 in 4, 1 in 5 numbers to gain access to these accounts, I feel like would drop off hugely. And I feel like if banks are giving you, and the phone software providers are giving you these opportunities, then maybe it is more down to the user side. But Polly, I'm keen to hear what your opinion is on this as well.
You know what? It has literally not occurred to me, I think, until right this moment, that stealing someone's phone is a lot more than just stealing someone's phone. Like, obviously, like, that's something I knew, but like, until hearing you guys kind of lay it out like that, it's like, oh yeah, it's not just about the phone anymore. The phone isn't necessarily the valuable thing that people are stealing, and that's kind of blown my mind a little bit, because yeah, like our whole lives are on our phone now, and our whole financial lives are on our phones. And when you think about, apps and accessing, bank accounts and any sort of financial account, pretty much everything goes through the phone, whether it's, a verification through a banking app or verification through a text message. Pretty much, if you want to access your money, you pretty much have to use your phone to do it. So it's actually quite horrifying to think that that's data could be just available there for anyone who feels like pinching your phone. So yeah, I don't really have that much to add from what you guys have said. I think you both have summed it up really well, and I think it's one of those things, again, obviously like me, that you don't necessarily think about until you start thinking about it, and then actually I feel like there is stuff to be done here. I think security is always going to be, paramount to a fintech or a financial institution. At the end of the day, I think if security has got to be the main concern, right, and keeping people safe, keeping their data safe, keeping their money safe has to be the highest priority on the list, surely. And I think, really there needs to be a lot done to help sort of protect this when it comes to, this phone theft. And I think it's a really interesting thought of like how, how a piece of hardware like a phone can contain just a multitude of digital identity and digital information all about you. So yeah, it's quite a scary thing, actually. What I really liked actually was a quote from James O'Sullivan, who's the CEO of Nuke from Orbit, from the article, who said prevention is always better than recovery. And I think that's absolutely right, and that really harks back to what you guys were saying in terms of like, yeah, you don't get your phone back once it's been stolen. Like, once it's gone, it's gone. And having ways to help prevent that, like having the multi-factor authentication, having the security measures in place, even just putting your phone somewhere where it can't get pinched as you're walking down the street. That's always going to be, I think, better. But yeah, you've kind of opened my eyes now to a new fear unlocked of having my phone stolen. Not only to lose all my pictures, but now to lose all my data and financial information. So thanks, guys.
Yeah, as you said, it's like everything's at risk now. It isn't just the device in the precious pictures that you've got on there. It's literally every aspect of your life could be honed in on by criminals, and that makes keeping your phone secure, even if it's just zipping up your handbag or putting it in your front pocket instead of your back pocket. These are things that could go a long way in protecting you, and not only your device but your data as well. But Polly, I think you've got a story that relates to mobile digital payments as well, so why don't we dive into that next?
Absolutely. What a segue. Big fan. So yeah, my story is also about phones, but in paying on phones. So Molly has brought tap to pay to iPhone to the UK. So now businesses of all sizes will be able to benefit from Apple's tap to pay technology, as Molly has enabled the software for its UK customers. So normally, in order to accept card payments, merchants will have to have some sort of hardware or payment terminal to accept that payment. However, with tap to pay technology, businesses can bypass this stage of having a piece of hardware and just doing it straight to phones. This is something I think we've seen and elsewhere as well. I'm pretty sure there's quite a lot of scope for it in kind of like the small and micro business stages. I know if you go to like a lot of markets, people that use terminals there tend to be able to do tap to phone. So it's really exciting to see a company like Molly bringing it in. And I think, it really goes in line with Molly's mission to help money management within businesses in Europe and bringing fast, convenient, and secure ways to accept payments all through a phone, which pretty much everyone has right now. I think is going to be quite a game changer for a lot of businesses, and it's particularly those who use the Molly app on a daily basis where they can run their business. So having just that extra feature of tap to pay on iPhone at the checkout is, quite a big thing. And I think, it's quite an exciting thing to see when we have alternative payment methods. I know we talk about that a lot and kind of like having different choices, different ways to make payments, but I think having the alternative ways to take payments is also something quite exciting that we don't necessarily talk about it from that view. Like we always kind of talk about it from the consumer side of things, but actually from the business and the merchant side of things, it can be quite interesting as well. So, I mean, I'd really love to get your guys' thoughts on this. I mean, obviously, as we've just said, kind of everything is going through the phone right now in terms of like your financial activities. So it kind of makes sense, I guess, for like merchants and small businesses and businesses of any size, as Molly have said, to be able to sort of harness that same kind of energy and use their phones for taking payments. So, I mean, I'd really be interested to hear what kind of you guys think about it and what you think about the benefit and whether, is tap to pay on phones, on iPhones in this case, but on any phone, is that going to be kind of like the future of having a business, like making payments on your phone? I mean, what do you guys think? Tom, I'll go to you first.
I feel like it's definitely good news for small businesses. I mean, especially when you think about the fact that for many small businesses, the cost of getting a POS system in, or just a traditional card reader, I think it's actually, you don't realize how expensive those are. They can set them back hundreds, depending on the type of business. They need multiple; it could be thousands, and it's just a huge upfront cost to pay to start taking payments from cards or from phones. And I think offering this much cheaper alternative where they can use their, in this case, iPhones already, that they already own, they can, they don't have this huge upfront cost to deal with in order to take payments. I think that's going to be huge news for especially the smallest businesses, and it could prove really good news for these small businesses in getting in much more number of payments they'd be able to offer, Apple Pay, Google Pay, just by having their iPhone and being with Molly. And I think that's such a huge thing, and it could be a lot more influential than maybe you first think when you think, oh, it's just a nice little offering. But the more small businesses that have that opportunity without having to put that upfront cost in, I think that's going to be really big news, and could have just long term, just really good impact for the economy. And yeah, like you said, I think we could definitely expect to see it happening more and more, particularly across the smaller merchants across the UK.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you've hit the nail on the head there. And I think the impact this is going to have to the smaller businesses is really going to be exponential, as well as the larger businesses as well. But particularly when you think about, not having to buy that additional piece of hardware, not having to set it up and manage it, card readers, it's just boom, on the phone, let's go. And, I am a great lover of a little craft market and other such events, and I can see this going down a storm in places like that, and like sort of the very small businesses or like the one man bands where they just kind of want to get things off the ground without having to invest too much in at the start, so they can focus on their actual business and offering. So yeah, I think you're absolutely right. This is just a very exciting thing. I mean, Francis, what do you think?
I think you guys have summed it up really nicely so far, to be honest. I think, yeah, like the main benefits really are the cost saving aspect of it. I think, well, just literally just like you said then, that being able to sort of put those resources that otherwise would have to be spent on, a physical payment terminal, and instead being able to put that towards improving an offering, be it making it more efficient or, offering greater variety of different versions of that product. I think whatever way you look at it, it really is helpful. And then in addition to it, I think with a physical terminal, it would be harder, or it would just be an additional bit of technology that you would need to integrate within the infrastructure to track payments and refunds and sort of access funding and account management. Whereas when it's on your phone, I think everything is right there. And I know that we talk about the sort of all-in-one platforms and super apps for consumers, but from a business standpoint, I think that having this pay on phone, and in this case on iPhone, service is almost like the super app for businesses. It means that they can manage accounts, they can take payments, they can sort of refund payments. It almost seems like you said, similar to what you said, in that, why would you need anything else, especially for a micro business that is, like you say, trying to get off the ground running? I think it's just the perfect solution for that sort of situation. And then as you grow, and then as you get perhaps even more branches or whatever it might be, then the option is there, and you can dedicate some resources to facilitating other payments through actual physical terminals, and you can extend the budget to afford that. But I think especially for starting off, it's a crucial bit of technology, and I think we will see it take off. And just one sort of caveat with it, I suppose, is that this is specifically for iPhone users. Android users would need to use a different sort of tap to pay solution, but they exist, and they would be just as useful as tap to pay on iPhone. So yeah, all in all, I think it really, perhaps the only full drawback would be if somebody tried to swap from Apple to Android. But I mean, that really is sort of nitpicking. And I think overall, I think it is a great solution.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're absolutely right there in everything you've said. And I think, I don't really have anything to add from what we've already discussed. It's just something that can only really, benefit businesses, and hopefully we'll see those benefits as we move forward. But anyway, why don't we move on to our last article? And Francis, you can take it away.
Thank you very much. So yeah, as I mentioned earlier, it's all about the impact that fintech has had on SMEs in Australia. And I know that's a bit broad, and talking about the fintech industry, you normally end up saying something about insurance, payments, regulations, but sort of saying fintech more generally, it's quite it's a broad statement, I suppose. But the reason this stood out to me is that in its first major report exploring the tangible impact of the fintech industry, and the impact it's having on the economy and business across Australia, Fintech Australia revealed that 56% of small businesses are leveraging a fintech provider for in-person transactions. And a similar number, 57%, of regional small businesses are also leveraging fintech payment solutions for payments over their major bank counterparts. And I'll come back to that, but that really stood out. And I mean, when we talk about challenges and fintech challenges, sort of trying to uproot and disrupt the traditional financial ecosystem, I think this is just evidence that it's succeeding. But Fintech Australia found that small businesses have been among the biggest beneficiaries of the transition to fintech-powered modern payment systems, with the average benefits across all fintech solutions totaling $9 billion as a result of their adoption. In addition to measuring its impact, the report also noted the key factors holding back broader fintech payment adoption, namely businesses' concerns about perceived operational costs, security, and privacy. And one of the big sort of takeaways from the article is that it suggests more education is needed. But really following on from your article, I suppose, Polly, in this idea of, startups utilizing fintech, and given how optimistic the fintech ecosystem has been so far this year, I wanted to see if you guys sort of agree that this is a trend that we're going to continue to see across the globe, in that fintech solutions are going to be preferred to traditional offerings, and how that might evolve. I just thought it was quite interesting. So yeah, Polly, I'll go to you first.
I think that this is, such a really interesting idea and a really interesting concept. And I think the more, I've read into the article and stuff like that, and the more I'm on it, I think, there's quite something here in terms of, small businesses turning to fintechs. And I think that just makes total sense with everything that we know about the fintech industry and what that does to economy and what that does to businesses. And having, small businesses turn to fintech solutions, I just think it just makes total sense, because that's kind of what fintech's for, right? Fintech has always been the problem solving, the figuring out the different niches and what can be done to make that, make those changes or make things easier for certain people. And when it comes to kind of small businesses, I think it's just the perfect playground for a fintech to really thrive. And then when you think about like, wider economies like we're having in, like, obviously think about Australia in this specific article, but to actually, see that power and see the, the boom within the economy, I think is fantastic. And I guess, we always say that the backbones of economies are small businesses. So it makes sense then to have those small businesses hand in hand with fintech and how they can, have the different payment technologies, have the different, different products and services to aid them on their business journey and leverage the fintech solutions. I think it just makes total sense to me. And I'm probably rambling a little bit, but I think it's quite exciting to hear tangible evidence of the good that fintech can do, and on a large scale as well. Like fintech fueling a $9 billion boom for small businesses in Australia. That's huge. That's a unbelievably large number, and to think that that's something that fintech has had a hand in is just very exciting. And it kind of makes you sort of realize like, oh yeah, this industry is good, and there is a lot that can be done with fintech. And I think that's just really great. And I would be interested to see this report sort of again, in a year's time, in a few years' time. I'd be interested to see this report taking place in, other locations, other ecosystems, to sort of really get to grips with how else fintech can like support different places. But I think, having small businesses and fintechs working together it just makes total sense to me. And I think it's very exciting. Again, I'm rambling, but I love it. It's great.
Yeah, definitely. And I think one of the things that you just said that stood out is this idea that we're finally seeing evidence of fintechs being these huge disruptors. And I mean, it's not to say that we haven't seen it before, because obviously we have, but I think it's really reassuring and refreshing when you see that there's like you just said, it's $9 billion. That's a huge like impact on the financial ecosystem. And it really goes to show that fintech is slowly achieving that, the thing that it set out to do, which ultimately was to make payments or financial services, I should say, more accessible to everyone, and ensuring that organizations that want to, or people that want to create organizations, have an easier job in doing so. And yeah, no, it really is fantastic to sort of see and celebrate the success. And Tom, do you have any different thoughts, or are you sort of in the same boat as us, really, in just sort of celebrating this?
No, I think you two have summed it up really well, and I don't have a lot more to add. I think I was thinking the same as you guys. It's just the scale of it is what hit me, is just how much of an impact it can have on one economy. And as we were just saying beforehand, we were talking about how it can have an impact on SMEs, and we often see in economies that SMEs take up the vast majority of an economy. It's SMEs driving the economy, and fintech solutions are just enabling them to thrive. Really, they're able to accept more types of payments. They're able to just do a lot more things. They're able to be more flexible, and it just ultimately means that there's huge economic benefits, as we're seeing here. And yeah, other than that, I don't have a lot to add, but I just think, yeah, obviously, as you said, it's just such great news, and it just goes to show the huge impact that even simple fintech solutions can have when they're all combined, and what that really enables these small businesses to do on a sort of big scale.
Brilliant. So that brings us to the end of our discussion today. Thank you guys so much for bringing those articles and that great chat. If you want to hear any more about anything that we've spoken about today, head on over to fintechtimes.com, where we've got plenty more news and insights over there. But very quickly, let's go on to what I learned this week. So each week we are learning so much new news and information about the fintech world, being on the Fintech Times editorial team, that we thought would be fun to share that with our listeners. Tom, what have you learned this week?
This week, I read a very interesting study from Morgan McKinley that showed that the fintech sector led growth in professional vacancies in 2024, posting a 44% year-on-year increase across the UK. And I think that just shows of what we've been talking about today, just the growth of fintech and the real optimism that's surrounding it at the moment.
Fantastic. And Francis, what have you learned this week?
So this week I learned that the cryptocurrency exchange Bybit has launched Bybit Pay in Brazil, a new payment solution that integrates with the country's instant payment system Pix. And given just how big and successful Pix is, I think it's really interesting that they are now sort of integrating a crypto offering to work alongside it, and it adds to this whole thing that we've been talking about sort of payment inclusion and the expanding the variety of payment options available to consumers.
And what I've learned this week is that Lloyds Bank has teamed up with My Pocket Skill, a financial education platform targeted at Gen Z, to launch a co-branded campaign aimed at helping students become financially independent. But anyway, guys, thank you so much for joining me this week. It has been a pleasure, as always, to talk about fintech with you. And yeah, have a great week, and I will catch you on the next one.
See you guys next week.
See you then.
Thanks for listening to the Fintech Times News and Views podcast. Don't miss next week's episode and continue the conversation using #TFT News and Views and follow us at the Fintech Times.